and live stream. If they want to get the translation, that they will have to go into the link and join us as participants. Live stream if they want to. Hey, Danny. So we're going to ask our Rocketship panelists if you guys can turn off your cameras while we get to the agenda item, and at that point I will invite you to join us with your camera on. In a few minutes, I'm going to make an announcement to the general public that those that are joining us through the live stream, if they want to hear the proceedings in Spanish or Vietnamese, they can join us as participants through the link that is on our website. And then I am going to go through some of the logistics on how we're going to handle the translation, both for the public and for the board and cabinet when we get to that section. So as soon as the board joins us and we start the meeting, I will go through the logistics of it.
Thank you.
They're not there? Oh, no, it's not on there yet.
I'm guessing they haven't signed on.
No, they haven't. Leonardo is the Spanish, right?
Hey, Juan, we literally ended our closed session a few minutes ago, so some of the board members may be a little tardy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm noticing it's just about 7, so I can see other.
Guess we're waiting on George then.
Yes. And our Vietnamese translator, I think, also. Tan, I'm going to rely on you in a few, in a couple of different places to translate in Vietnamese when we get to the instructions on for those that need translation. Because if I say it in English and they need translation, they won't understand me. So.
I'm not sure they'll understand me either one. So.
Okay, we'll work on it.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'll try my best.
Okay. All right, George is here. So let me go over the logistics a little bit, and then so right before we get started. Okay, Ton, is that okay?
That's fine. That's fine.
All right. Good evening, everybody. We have the ability to translate, and so it will be done simultaneously. So for those of you that are wishing to hear the proceedings in either Spanish or Vietnamese, you will have to register as a participant. And when you get to that platform, you will be able to see on the lower part of the screen a globe, and you then can indicate in what language you want to hear the meeting, Spanish or Vietnamese. And that would allow for you to hear the translators at the same time as the meeting is going on. So we don't have to pause and translate for every speaker. When it comes down to public speakers speaking either in Spanish or Vietnamese, cabinet and the board, we will also have to indicate there to go into, if the speaker is a Vietnamese speaker, we will have to go into the Vietnamese speaking, because the translator will then translate from Vietnamese to English. And then the same for the Spanish speaker into English, okay? When we get into that situation, we will pause and make sure that everybody is able to get to that section so that we're able to understand what's being said.
All right, sounds good, Juan. Thank you for that.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Si necesitan oír la junta en español, se necesitan registrar como participantes y pueden ir a la página de internet del distrito para registrarse como participantes, y allí van a poder ver un globo en la pantalla hacia abajo, donde pueden indicar que quieren oír la junta en español. Entonces, para poder hacerlo, tener el acceso a la traducción en español, tienen que participar como participantes. Entonces, tienen que ir a la página de internet del distrito y registrarse a través de ese link. Tom, can you just, let them know to go to the website and register as participants if they want to hear the meeting in Vietnamese, please?
Which website is that one?
Our district website.
And FMSD.org. Kính chào quý vị. Trước mắt Thanh cũng muốn nói là tiếng Việt của Thanh cũng không có rành lắm, mà Thanh chịu khó nói cho quý vị được cần nói gì trong cái meeting này á, thì quý vị vô cái website của Franklin-McKinley, register ở đó để có cái cơ hội để nói cho khoảng 3 phút về cái trường hợp của học sinh. Thì yeah, okay, I think that's all I could say, to direct them to the website and register as a participant, right? Juan? Oh, great. Favorite persons here.
So there's our Vietnamese translator, so we'll allow her to kind of just settle in, and then we'll, what we can do is start with the meeting, Mr. Vice President, and then when we get to the item 5.1, we can go over the instructions once again for those that may join us, later. If you all that are signed up right now, you can see that the globe has appeared, and that's where we will go to indicate what language we want to hear it. Okay.
So when I see English and Vietnamese, is there a Spanish one available yet?
It will be there as well. Summer is in the middle of setting all of it.
Great, thank you.
No, it's only English and Vietnamese.
Okay, so we'll have some time right now, so we're going to start the meeting. So we'll start with item 3.01, flag salute. And if I can have Rudy, can you lead us in the flag salute today?
Okay, would everyone please stand and join in the flag salute? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. John?
Yep, thank you so much, Rudy. All right, moving on to item 3.02, approve, disapprove additions to the agenda. Board members? Hearing none, we will move on to item 3.03, approve, disapprove, order the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 3.04, report of action taken in closed session. Juan?
Yes. So the board, 4-0, approves the closed session minutes of January 12th, 2021. The board also unanimously approved the permanent appointment of Mr. Daniel Kennedy Frank as the permanent principal for McKinley Elementary. There are no other actions to report.
Great, thank you, Juan, and congratulations to Mr. Frank, Kennedy Frank. Moving on to item number 4, oral communications. Members of the public may address the board on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board or agenda items. Members of the public may also address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each, unless otherwise stipulated. No action can be taken on any agenda items at this time. Questions may be referred to the administration or put on a future agenda. 4.01, oral communications. And Juan, I'm going to have to ask you to help me out here in calling up the participants.
So we have the public is here to, most of them are here to speak on 501. So that's, we do have one speaker that has asked to speak in general matters or communication. So, and that is Scott Schulemson. So we will ask him to unmute and deliver his comments.
Scott, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, it looks like you can probably hear me now.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Scott.
Excellent. Good evening. I wanted to speak to the district budget. This is something I like to do when we begin bargaining. And so I've been rather silent on the matter the last few meetings, but we've now commenced bargaining with FMEA and the district, and we are looking forward to a productive and successful round of bargaining. And I believe we have a good track record for such. We've had a number of settlements in the last several years that avoided dragged out bargaining and avoided mediation and things like that. So I look forward to another successful year. And I wanted to speak to the first interim, as well as look back at a couple of trends the last few years. And I just like to share my perspective because I think it's important. Now, I want to preface this with making it clear that I understand that the budget is challenging given that we are in an era of declining enrollment and budget cuts. And we have had serious cuts over the last several years that affected everybody from administration to classified to certificated. So I do understand that, and I want to make sure that that is clear. However, I think it's also important to point out that there is a trend, and I'm just going to go back the last 3 years to quickly point at this trend. In 2018-19, we started the year as a district with a total of $16.7 million. The projections were that the total reserve was going to end the year of 2018-19 down by $2 million, but it actually went up by $3 million to $19.7 million. In 1920, we started with that 19.7 million, and the projection was for it to go down by 4 million, but it actually again went up by 1.7 million, and we ended the year at 21.4 million for last year when we closed the books. And now this year, we started with that 21.4 million, and the original projections and the adopted budget were to end the year at $11.8 million. So a deficit expenditure of over $8 million. But in the recent first interim, our ending balance is now up. The projection for this year is now up that we will end this year with $17.8 million. So that's $6 million above what was in the adoption budget. And if history is an indication, the second interim and then the final closing of the books is going to show that we actually deficit spended even less than what's in the first interim. I bring this up because it's really important to look at the trend. The district's ending balance has actually increased the last 3 years. We went from 16.7 to 19.7 to 21.4. And in all of those years, the district was projecting 2 million losses and then 4 million losses. And then this year, over 8 million in losses or deficit spending. So this is all good news. I'm glad the district is not deficit spending the way that's been projected. But I just want the board to have a good understanding of how it looks from this side when we bargain, because we do see that through some good luck through the state and feds and through some strategic cuts, the district has done more than remain solvent. The ending reserve keeps going up. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we commence with this round of bargaining. And I'm happy to send this data to board members and to Assistant Superintendent Jason Van, anyone who would like to look at it. And I appreciate your time. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Scott. Juan, is there anyone else that would like to speak on the list
Okay.
for oral communications?
No, that's the only speaker for general matters. The rest of the speakers that have registered is for item 5.01.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5, public hearing, 5.01, Rocketship Mosaic Charter Petition Renewal Public Hearing.
Yes, thank you. I'll start introducing and then some of the logistics, and then Dr. Martinez-Palmer, if you then will introduce the team from Rocketship, and then the overall process that we're undertaking in regards to the renewal. So I just want to reiterate, if those of you that are participants, you have the ability to listen to the presentation and the comments by going to the bottom where it says interpretation and selecting the language. The interpreters can at that point will be translating what we're saying in English into those primary languages. So I'll just say that in Spanish and then Vietnamese. Tan, if you could just reiterate where they can find that in Vietnamese. Para los que están participando en esta junta a través del Zoom, pueden oír la junta. Si van abajo donde está el globo, les da la opción de escuchar la junta en español o en vietnamés. Obviamente en español lo van a hacer ustedes. Y van a estar traduciendo la presentación y los comentarios usando ese método de traducir a la misma vez que se está haciendo la presentación.
Yeah, okay, nếu quý vị muốn nghe cái presentation này trong tiếng Việt á, thâm nhập vô tiếng Việt thì ở dưới cái Zoom link, cái Zoom client thì quý vị bấm vô cái icon interpretation, select vô cái tiếng Việt á.
Okay, and so then at this point, I want to make sure that all the translators are ready to go. And I will pass it over to Dr. Martinez-Palmer.
Good evening, everyone. So today we have a public hearing regarding the renewal of Rocketship Mosaic Elementary School, which is an independent charter school located in the Franklin-McKinley School District community since August 2011. They renewed their charter in 2016 with board approval. So it is now at the end of the 5-year term, and it is time to review their petition and to evaluate and to see if they will continue as part of Franklin-McKinley or be denied. Today is a public hearing. The petition was submitted to the district staff on December the 7th. The law says that there are 60 days for the school to have a public hearing, and so today is a public hearing. And so we will not be responding as staff in terms of the petition. We are only listening to the public hearing and hearing from the community. So I believe with us today is Principal Kristen Duprell. I believe we also have Director Danny Echevedy, who was actually the former principal of the site. And I believe we also have our Director Janine Ramirez joining us. And if there's someone else that I've missed, I apologize. So I'm gonna now hand it over to the first speaker for Rocketship Mosaic Elementary.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez-Palmer. We have two more staff members as well, Keisha Bailey and Jessica Walker, who are here to support, but we can go ahead and start with our presentation. And we'll just be saying next slide, please, as agreed. So next slide, please. Good evening, Superintendent Cruz and trustees. I am Janine Ramirez with Rocketship Public Schools, a public charter school network working to eliminate the achievement gap. I am pleased to be here today in partnership with parents, teachers, leaders, and students of Rocketship Mosaic Elementary to ask you to renew the school's charter for another 5 years. Next slide, please. Rocketship Public Schools is a nonprofit network of public elementary charter schools. As we've consistently demonstrated, Rocketship schools provide disadvantaged communities with a high quality education. Our network has improved performance every year since the Common Core state standards were first introduced. Our students classified as disadvantaged have consistently outperformed all California students in math, and they are quickly closing the gap in ELA. Next slide, please. Rocketship Mosaic Elementary is an exemplar in our network. The school serves predominantly socioeconomically disadvantaged students of color, and nearly 6 out of 10 of our students are classified as English learners. Leading Rocketship Mosaic is Principal Kristen Duprell. Ms. Duprell brought her deep experience and educational expertise to Mosaic 6 years ago and leads our school with dedication, passion, and excellence. I'd now like to introduce you to Ms. Duprell.
Thank you for those kind words, Janine. Good evening, Superintendent Cruz and trustees. I am so proud to stand before you tonight to represent the diverse, incredible community of Rocketship Mosaic Elementary. I also represent more than just Mosaic staff and families. I represent the dreams of my family, and in particular, the dreams of my grandma. My grandma was a visionary. She was the first person in her family to leave the fields of the Philippines, travel to Manila to attend university, and then move to America, all in the pursuit of a better life. And even though her education was not valued in San Francisco due to her thick Filipino accent, she continued to hold on to a crazy idea that education was the single most important factor to get out of poverty. She inspired me when I struggled as a freshman at UC Berkeley. She inspired me to keep going in my first years of teaching, and she inspires me every single day to keep fighting for equity for our Rocketeers. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. My personal mission, our mission at Rocketship Mosaic, and no doubt the mission of each of us in this virtual room tonight, is to close the educational equity gap for all students. We know that even though all students receive equal access to public education, the reality is that the quality of a student's education is highly contingent on where a student lives and their access to resources. Focusing on our core values of respect, responsibility, empathy, persistence, and global citizenship, we prepare our Rocketeers for college and beyond through a truly excellent public education. Our families choose to send their students to Mosaic because they know that as educators, we will love them, we will unleash their potential, and that we will never give up on them. Our Rocketeers are why we do what we do. Next slide, please. We push ourselves every single day to give our Rocketeers what they need to excel in school and beyond. We personalize learning for each student to meet them exactly where they need, using data and personal relationships to diagnose problem areas and find solutions. I am also proud that our educators reflect the makeup of our students. It is so important for our Rocketeers to see people who look like them in the classroom. Our amazing teachers lead the learning for every student, leading whole class, small group, and individual instruction. I am so proud of our dedicated teachers who return to Rocketship Mosaic year after year to deepen their craft and refine their skills. Next slide, please. Simply put, all means all. To serve all students with excellence, we must include all students in excellence. Our specialized inclusion program for our students with moderate to severe special needs, as well as our integrated special education program for students with mild to moderate needs, are both meaningfully included in our general education classrooms. We also know that to educate students, we have to keep them in class. I am proud that we are part of a larger approach in Franklin-McKinley to minimize suspensions. Rocketship Mosaic has not suspended a single student in 7 years. We use restorative justice practices to address the root causes of behavioral issues and partner with families to help students build positive coping skills. Next slide, please. Rocketship Mosaic is so much more than a school. It's a community of learners embedded within a larger community of neighbors. When COVID-19 closed our campus in March, we pivoted to distance learning in just 24 hours. Our daily life teaching, social emotional learning, enrichments, assemblies, and more are carried out over Chromebooks we have provided for every single student. Our Care Corps team makes sure that our Rocketeers have what they need to learn every day from home, from food to rental assistance to tech support and more. And though our Rocketeers are largely at home right now, we're so proud of the partnerships we've built to improve the neighborhood around our campus. Thank you to each of you who have helped us to forge partnerships to keep our neighborhood safe and thriving. Next slide, please. But just like we do at Rocketship, let's look at the data. Next slide, please. Rocketship Mosaic largely reflects the demographic makeup of our neighborhood and of the Franklin-McKinley School District. Next slide, please. Rocketship Mosaic is proud to be one of the top performing schools in Franklin-McKinley. We are also so proud to be named a California Distinguished School in 2020, joining 3 other nearby schools to make Franklin-McKinley the leading district in Santa Clara County for distinguished schools. Next slide, please. Traditionally, students classified as socioeconomically disadvantaged do not perform as well as their more affluent peers, creating an economic achievement gap. To truly create equity in education, we must eliminate this gap. This chart shows that our socioeconomically disadvantaged students outperform their wealthier peers and the state average for all students in both math and ELA. However, our internal economic achievement gaps make clear that there is work to do. We will not rest until all students are achieving at or above grade level in both subjects. Next slide, please. Ethnic achievement gaps are also a barrier to equity. Traditionally, Hispanic student performance lags behind that of their Asian peers. This chart shows the internal ethnic achievement gaps for Asian and Hispanic students. I am proud of the high levels of achievement for both groups and the relatively smaller ethnic achievement gaps at Rocketship Mosaic, but it's not enough. We must do better to get all students achieving at the highest possible levels. Next slide, please. 58% of our students are classified as English learners, and we are so proud of how well we are helping them grow and achieve. The trends of improvement over the past few years point to even more success, getting the majority of English learners up to and above grade level in the future. Next slide, please. We do, however, have room for improvement in English language instruction. This chart shows a cohort of 235 students over 4 years. We moved nearly half to reclassification. However, the remaining students are not moving from expanding and bridging into fluency fast enough. Therefore, we are focusing on designated ELD small group instruction and additional targeted professional development for our teachers. Next slide, please. Since Rocketship Mosaic was last before you 5 years ago, great things have happened. In both math and reading, our Rocketeers are growing rapidly, on pace to set records in the years ahead. Next slide, please. Now imagine what more is possible in the next 5 years. Building off of our strong foundation of academic achievement, care for our community, and excellent educators, the sky truly is the limit for Rocketship Mosaic. Please renew our charter for another 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President, at this point, I'm not sure if you want to have the board ask questions from the presentation from the staff, or if you want to move on to the public comment from those that are here to offer testimonial. Mr. Vice President, did you hear what I?
Sorry, I wasn't.
Do you want to have the board ask questions, or do you want to move on to the public comment portion?
Board members, do we have any questions following this presentation? If not, we'll go ahead with the comments now on.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask is, we have 23 registered as attendees. Not sure how many of those are asking to offer public comment. So I'm going to ask, if you are going to want to offer public comment, if you could raise your hand by raising your hand on the bottom portion of the screen, so that we can determine how much time each member is going to have. The more speakers we have, the less time we allocate per speaker. So we want to make sure that we allow the meeting to move forward once we know how many speakers we have. Once you've indicated that you are going to speak, we will then ask each member to unmute one at a time as we call the participant. And then what we're going to ask is, if you are going to offer public comment in Spanish or in Vietnamese, that you let us know as soon as you unmute which language you're going to be speaking, so that the board and the staff can then switch over to that language, so that we can hear the comments and translate it back to us in English. Board member, do you have any question in regards to that, how to do that?
That sounds good to me, Juan.
Okay, so right now I'm seeing that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have about 12 speakers, Mr. Vice President. So with that number, I think we can go ahead and leave it at 2 minutes, so as to not take too much time by going to the 3-minute limit. Is that okay with the board?
That is fine with me. Board members, any concerns about that?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Great, thank you, George. We'll proceed with that one.
Okay, so we're going to, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a timer. And so when you hear the beep, that means that we're going to cut the speaker off at that point, just so that we can have the meeting move forward, okay? So we're going to have Helen Juan be our first speaker.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to share excerpts from a letter by a former FMSD trustee. He writes, as a longstanding public education advocate and a former FMSD trustee, I've become familiar with Rocketship Mosaic, its staff and families. Mosaic continues to be a high-performing school, serving some of our most vulnerable families. 70% of students at Romo are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and over half of the students are English language learners, and Romo is beating the odds in serving these students. 9% of their students are special education, and of those, 27% are above state standards in ELA and 31% in math. English learners are also making great strides with 33% above state standards in ELA and 51% in math. Romo is also a place that opens its doors to the community's benefit. Examples that I'll paraphrase: distributing meals when school closures were announced, hosting community meetings with city police and the mayor's task force to address area gang activity and inform neighbors, and partnering with the city to communicate census counting issues in District 7. He states, "I am excited to see what Romo can do for our community. I support the reauthorization and urge this board to vote to approve Mosaic for another 5 years. Sincerely, Omar Torres, trustee, San Jose Evergreen Community College District." Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Vin Dylan.
Hi, my name is Vin Dylan. I want to have an opportunity to say why Romo should be stayed open. After attending 3 schools in our district, meeting with 2 directors of special education, very little was done to properly support our child. As a result, we left our district for Romo. What Romo offered our child in support was not offered by the other 3 schools. The school is inclusive. She has peer buddies to help her with almost everything. Romo offered home visit. Teacher come to our home, get to know our daughter better. They understand our daughter's learning need. They use the knowledge to customize teaching material for our daughter. This has never been done at the other 3 schools. At IEP meetings, at least 6 people are there going over every detail of our daughter's progress and need. They go out of their way to address our concerns and question. Again, I have not seen this type of professionalism and detail from the other 3 schools. We are fortunate to have found Romo. We are grateful for Romo. We have been attending Romo for 3 years now. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosa Lemus.
Voy a hablar en español.
So we can
Hola.
switch over to the Spanish channel, and then we will hear the simultaneous translation.
Ok, gracias.
Puede comenzar.
Gracias. Hola, mi nombre es Rosa Lemus y yo soy la presidenta del School Site Council y llevo 10 años con Romo. En mi experiencia en el School Site Council ha crecido mi liderazgo y asimismo nos han brindado la oportunidad de tomar decisiones para el beneficio de los estudiantes. En Rocketship nosotros somos padres de familia, pero también somos socios de la escuela. Yo llegué como adulta a este país, así que no tenía idea de cómo funcionaba el sistema educativo, pero Romo me ha ayudado mucho, me ha dado el poder y las herramientas que como padre de familia necesito para poder entender el rendimiento y el crecimiento académico de mis hijos. Pero en esta noche no estoy acá como presidenta ni como madre, sino como una defensora de una comunidad que tiene el derecho a una educación de alta calidad, en la cual los niños puedan desarrollar sus fortalezas. Por eso estoy enfrente de ustedes para pedirles un voto positivo para la escuela. Romo ha dejado una gran huella en nuestra familia. Por eso me gustaría que este gran trabajo continúe por muchos años más. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Next we have Mitzi Gomez.
Hello, my name is Mitzi Gomez. Thank you, trustees, for your time. I have 1 child currently at Romo. Distance learning was something new to us all. I was very pleased to see my daughter go through computer learning. She was able to exceed her goals academically. I cannot thank the teachers enough. They are always available to answer our questions. Although it has been a long while in distance learning, my daughter is still eager to go to school. Distance learning did not stop bringing knowledge to our students and us parents. We still come together as a community and encourage our next generation to excel. We are so blessed to be part of Romo community. We hope that Romo can stay open for another 5 more years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Sarah Howley.
Hi, I'm Sarah Velu, the SIP specialist for Romo's Moderate to Severe Inclusion Program. Of the many reasons Romo deserves 5 more years, this is what stands out to me. When I was in 4th grade, I was a tutor for kids with special needs. I loved working with my friends from another class, but I soon learned not everyone treated them the way they deserve to be treated. I did not like that. My new friends impacted me so much that by the time I was in 6th grade, I knew I wanted to be a special education teacher. I started working at Romo 5 years ago. After my first week at Romo, I knew I was meant for this school. What stood out to me was inclusion. No matter what class or grade you're in, you're a part of the community. Children with special needs are in general education classes, at launch, and at recess with their friends from their grade. Rocketeers even apply to be their special friend as a peer buddy, a friend in their grade to help them around school. I wish I went to a school like Romo when I was in elementary. I wish my friends I tutored had the same experience I know students at Romo have. I'm very proud to say I teach at Romo, and I cannot express how amazing it is to see inclusion work the way it does at Romo. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey Nguyen.
Hello guys, I'm Aiden because I'm good.
This is my son. Okay.
This is my Pikachu because I have
My son is a high functioning autistic.
Okay.
One of the reason Romo deserved for another 5 years, I would like to express my feeling. When I was when he was another school, he was not doing well. I would receive a call every day that they could not work with him. I spent a lot of time and financial to help him develop, but I was not able to help him. When I got accepted to Romo, the phone call stopped. Romo reviewed my son's IEP and walked me through the process. They used my knowledge and create a plan that was the best for my son. I can trust Romo to care for my son. After 6 months, my son has improved so much. Before Romo, he couldn't talk much, and now he could communicate. This is very important to me because development for special needs kids is very important for my son, which is a huge for my son. Romo is a great accepting environment for my son and other students with special needs. Please keep Romo for the next 5 years. This is from the bottom of my heart, and for the parent like me, I thank him enough for Romo have been support my son, and all the teachers have been working so hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rosa Vasquez. Oh. Al parecer, la señora Vázquez está usando una computadora con una versión más vieja y no podemos poder darle la oportunidad de que hable, que se escuche. Si puede ingresar con alguna otra computadora, tal vez podemos que pueda comunicarse. Vamos a ver con Evelyn Muy Chai.
Hi, my name is Evelyn T. Palacridi. My daughter is currently a first grader at Romo, and I also happen to have 3 nephews attending Romo as well. As many first-time parents feel, I was a bit apprehensive about my child going into a public school. In my daughter's first year at Romo made us feel so confident that not only was she going to get the best possible education that a public school can offer, but she was also completely safe within the walls of the campus. I mean, with these unprecedented times, I was the most impressed that students transitioning into virtual learning went so smoothly. As Ms. Duprell indicated, Last March, at the start of the pandemic, Romo staff reacted so quickly that our students only had 1 day off before virtual learning was up and running. And I know other parents that said that their kids waited for months before the school started to offer any type of education at home. And that's really something I'm proud of by our staff. By the end of that school year, my kindergarten daughter was already reading at a first grade level. And now halfway through this first grade year, she's already reading at a second grade level, despite the fact that it's virtual learning. My husband and I are both products of Franklin-McKinley School District, and it would make us so proud to say that we're sending our child to the same district that taught us to be successful adults. I mean, from the staff to the students to the community that's around Romo, we feel that it's a benefit for the district to allow Romo to continue educating our children for a brighter future over the next 5 years and then some. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Dam. Joe Dam, you can now unmute yourself and offer your comments. Stop sharing that.
Can you hear me now? Yeah? No?
You're good, Joe.
I'm good to go?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so my name is Joe Dam. I'm with the Romo, the grade school for 6 years. And I want to thank you, Trustee Rodriguez, for bringing up his concern regarding traffic and safety at our school. I would like to let the board know that we would have worked very hard on this issue because safety around our neighborhoods is a top priority for us. We have significant reducing the traffic flow issue by implementing systems that support efficiency, pick up and drop off. We also add a crossing guard to ensure the safety of our family. And the city have added a blinking signal to alert incoming car for people to crossing the street. To further communication, we remind parents on a weekly report that they must follow the safety guideline and respect our neighborhood parking area. I hope we can continue to cooperate with Franklin-McKinley's board and assure that Romo, a great school, can continue to exist for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Jamie Abram.
Hi, my name is Jamie Ebron, and I am a proud Romo parent and also a product of Franklin-McKinley School District. My daughter, she's been a part of Romo since kinder and now is in the 3rd grade. When she started kinder, she didn't know how to read at all, and we were struggling with helping her learn how to read. By the end of the school year, though, she was well above grade level. I believe the reason for these stellar academic results is the personal one-on-one time, accountability, and strong communication with families. Romo really operates as a huge family, and that is all inclusive, and they make sure no one falls behind. I don't know where my daughter would be academically as well as socially without Romo. I'm grateful to be part of the Romo community. My daughter, she'll be graduating in a couple of years, but I'm hopeful other new students will have the chance to experience Romo excellence for themselves. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you guys will consider this.
Thank you. Xochitl Cruz.
Yes, this is me. Hi, my name is Xochitl.
Sorry about that. If you,
Sorry, can you hear me now?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is Miss Xochitl, Xochitl Cruz from Romo. I've been at Romo for 7 years. My children started at kindergarten, and all of those years have been wonderful. When my son was diagnosed with autism, as a parent, obviously I didn't want him to be behind or to have all of these obstacles that go with the disability. The teachers have put in so much effort, and I'm so proud to say that he is at grade level now. I know that parents of students with disabilities are happy because they trust that Romo has an inclusive model and will taking care of their children. I'm also a proud staff member of Romo, and I appreciate how I've been included in the professional development trainings. They have given me the tools as a parent and staff member to help my community. Please renew Romo for 5 more years. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Sophia Garcia. Okay, we're going to go to Melanie Lopez.
Good evening. My name is Melanie Lopez, or as the kids call me, Miss Hang. I've been part of the Romo family since 2012. Throughout my tenure, I've transitioned from being an hourly staff member to a STEM teacher thanks to robust professional development and Rocketship's Rising Teachers program. As a mom myself now, I feel the same level of pride our families feel whenever they see their child accomplish a new reading level or memorize new math facts. And most importantly, I understand the importance of having a school in your village that provides unconditional support in good times and during a global pandemic. Romo is this school. Parents are their child's forever teachers and will always know what's best. I'm proud to stand with my Romo community today as a teacher and parent, and humbly ask you to trust our parents, present and future, in their decision to send their children to Romo. Parents face difficult decisions every day, but I can say with confidence that our parents have never struggled with the decision to keep their children at our school. Romo is a sacred place in our community that fosters inclusion, innovation, and a love of learning. We need 5 more years to continue our impact in closing the opportunity gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Juliana Madrigal. Okay, so it looks like the 3 next speakers that raised or that have their hand raised are on older versions of Zoom, and we are unable to unmute them. So I apologize for that. Rosa Vasquez, Juliana Madrigal, and Sophia Garcia we are unable to activate them to be able to provide their public comment. What I would ask is if you are able to provide that in writing, then we will make sure that the board also gets your public comment. We do have, let me see, Vanessa Estevez.
Yes, hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is Vanessa Estevez, and for as long as I have been an educator, I have been a Rocketeer. As a new teacher, I vividly remember our last reauthorization. I sat listening to our families advocate for their child's right to receive a quality education. Today, as an assistant principal, I stand with them as we once again advocate for a better future for our students. For many of our families, Romo is not just a school. It is a promise for a better life for their children. I know this because as a Rocketship teacher myself, I've been to the homes of many of our families. I've met my students' chickens, dogs, birds, you name it. I've also listened to their parents' dreams, frustrations, and hopes for their students. No matter what difficulties students have when they show up to Romo, we do not give up on our kids. In my time as a teacher and now assistant principal, we have never suspended or expelled a child. We welcome students of all abilities on our campus, and we celebrate the qualities that make them unique. Today, we ask that you continue to let us do our part to eliminate the opportunity gap many of our students face and provide them with the equity they deserve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that we have, we're going to go ahead and try once again with Rosa Vasquez and see if we are able to.
Hola, buenas noches, ¿me escucha?
Sí, ¿va a dar comentario en español?
Sí, por favor. Ok. Hola, mi nombre es Rosa Vázquez. Soy madre de 2 niñas en Rocketship y la razón por la cual me gustaría que debería ser renovada es porque muchos padres confiamos la educación de nuestros hijos en esta escuela, ya que en mi experiencia nosotros hablamos 100% español en casa y en kinder mis hijas hablaban solo español y al entrar a Rocketship las apoyaron mucho con el inglés y eso las ayudará a que tengan una mejor educación y que puedan lograr sus sueños como ir a la universidad y que tengan más oportunidades en el futuro. Creo que es una escuela que cumple con todos los requisitos que un niño necesita para su crecimiento, tanto académico como personal. Rocketship no solo se enfoca en los estudiantes, sino también en los padres y en todo lo que necesitan para tener ahora su educación en casa. Gracias.
Gracias. So we're going to try once again with Juliana Madrigal. Okay, it's still not working. Sophia Garcia. Sophia, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello, can you guys hear her?
Yes.
Okay, Sophia, go.
Thank you.
Nice and good.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and I am a Bruin, and I am a first grader. My favorite part of Romo is spending time with my teachers because they're like family to me, and they teach me everything. We need Romo to stay open for 5 more years so kids can learn. Thank you for coming to listen to me. Please keep Romo open for 5 more years. Bye.
Thank you, Sophia. Okay, and we're going to have one more speaker before we close the public hearing. Daphne Torres.
My name is Daphne Torres, and I'm 5th grade at Rocketship Mosaic. I have been here since I was in kindergarten. I strongly believe that Rocketship deserves to stay 5 more years because the principal, Mr. Pearl, and all our teachers work hard for students daily. Rocketship Mosaic is an amazing school for many students. Students have the opportunity to be able to experience different activities with amazing teachers. Our school has fun additional classes like gardening, science, PE, and music. In every grade that I have been at Rocketship, my teachers have tried their best to make homework interesting in order for us to continue growing academically and as global citizens. Even in distance learning, our teachers have worked hard and with our families to find new ways to keep us interested and engaged in our learning. Rocketship welcomes students of diverse backgrounds. Even if we all are a big community of different people. Our creed reminds us that together we're all Rocketship Rocketeers.
Thank you, Daphne. So that concludes those that had wanted to speak. I know that Juliana Madrigal still has her hand up, but we are unable to allow her to unmute due to the fact that she's on an older version of Zoom. So I welcome Juliana to submit her comments via email, and I will make sure that the board receives them. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Vice President for you to, if the board has any further questions, if not, we can close the public hearing.
Okay. Board members.
Just wanted to thank Kristen, the principal, for all the information that she gave us. I did have some questions, but she answered them in terms of the percentage of special ed students, being at 9%, and then the LEP population being at 58%. So I got those answers. Suspensions. Interested to see that there haven't been any suspensions. I think she said 6 or 7 years. So that's very, very good. Anyway, but thank you to the principal and all the community members who spoke to us, and students, teachers. Thank you.
Carrie?
I don't have any questions, just a comment, just extending gratitude to everyone that spoke today, all the parents and the students and the staff. The presentation was great. I know personally what Rocketship is like. I do have one of my kids that attends a Rocketship school, so I'm very familiar with their learning style. So I can definitely agree with the comments that were made today. So thank you.
Rudy?
No questions at this time.
And I have no questions either. So with that, I will conclude the public hearing for the Romo Charter Renewal. Public hearing. And if I had a gavel, I would take that out, so. Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
No, thank you, everyone. So
thank you.
You are all free, feel free to join the rest of the meeting. If not, you can log off now and enjoy the rest of your night.
We will be logging off. Thank you so much.
So moving on to item 6.01, update on reclassification of English learners in FMSD. And that will go to Dr. Norma Martinez-Palmer.
Hello again. I am here to provide an update to our board and staff and community on the reclassification of English learners in Franklin-McKinley. This was a requested board item from the board. And so I'm going to ask, I think the slide deck is up. So next slide, please. So I want to start with just talking a little bit about who are our English learners in Franklin-McKinley. So at the time this data was taken for this presentation, which was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had identified 2,908 English learners. There has been a decline from last year. In this chart of our English learner population, most of our students come from Spanish-speaking homes. English learners are not necessarily proficient in their mother tongue. Sometimes there's some confusion amongst even families and educators who believe that the student has to speak their primary language or their mother tongue in order to be an English learner. And so remember that English learners are identified based on the results of the California Language Proficiency Assessment. Next slide, please. Franklin-McKinley welcomes newcomers to our schools. We have identified a newcomer in Franklin-McKinley as a student who is foreign born and has been in the United States for less than a year. This helps us when we identify newcomers to provide more focused and intensive services. Although a student is a newcomer well beyond his first year, it really helps us to really target the needs of those students in those first few months of school in the United States. Our newcomer students are not only learning a new language, but they're also trying to navigate their new cultural identity and experience in learning American or US American culture and learn the new ways of schooling. Of the 2,908 English learner students, I wanted to share with you that about 7% of those students, or 230 students, are newcomers. I think it's interesting that most of our students that are English learners come from Spanish-speaking homes, but as you can see here, most of the newcomer students come from Vietnamese-speaking backgrounds. Next slide, please. In the last 5 years, there has been a decline of our English learner student enrollment or identification in the district. I think it mirrors the declining enrollment of our district. And so English learners remain as EL students until they acquire enough English to be reclassified. So it may take some students maybe 2 or 3 years. It may take other students 5 or 6 years. Some students, it may take them longer. So the duration of being an English learner all depends on their development of the language. It's not just speaking the language, but it also includes reading and writing. Next slide, please. So what is reclassification? Reclassification, sometimes people refer to it as redesignation, sometimes those terms are used interchangeably, is a process when a student is reclassified in our records from English learner to fluent English proficient. We call these another acronym RFEP, Reclassified Fluent English Proficient Status. This means the student has met all the criteria to move from the status of EL to RFEP. As an English learner, students receive ELD services and support academically. When they are reclassified, they continue to receive those services if they need it, but we are no longer required to provide, for example, ELD to these students. Next slide, please. So these are our reclassification rates for the last 5 years. A reclassification rate is a metric that's often used for accountability. Often it's a way of evaluating a district's success in serving the students. You can see here that in 2015, we had the highest reclassification rate if we look at the last 5 years. And then it continued to decline to the year 2018-19. And last year, we got a nice boost up to 12.7%. Next slide, please. The way a reclassification rate is calculated is that you take the current year, the number of students that are reclassified in that school year, and you divide it by the number of students that were identified as English learner in the previous year. So as in this example for the year 2019-20, we reclassified last year 421 students, but in 18-19 we had 3,318 English learners. You do the division there and you get the reclassification rate of 12.7%. Most of this data is available on a website from the California Department of Education called DataQuest. Often that data is reported the year after, it's always lagging by a year. So sometimes we have to keep that data internally. I also want to let the board know that the data that you will see in DataQuest includes the charter schools in our district. And unfortunately, and I have to admit, I'm frustrated by it, we have to do our own calculations internally to find our reclassification rate for our schools without including the charters. Because sometimes when looking at a reclassification rate with charters, it's inflated or elevated, I should say. And if we want to get a true picture of how we are doing with our own students in our own schools in Franklin-McKinley, we have to filter that data so that we're only looking at the schools within our district. Next slide. So as requested by one of the board members here who asked about our comparison to state data, this may look like a little busy graph, but I'll explain it. The blue graph explains the reclassification rates for the last 5 years for the district with our charter. So this would include the Rocketship schools, KIPP, Voices, and even Cornerstone up until last year. The bars in red are our own schools without those charters. The bars in the yellow, the mustard yellow color, is what the county reclassification rates are, and the green bars is the state. When requested to compare ourselves to the county, I realized that all the state data and all the county data includes charter schools. So I thought it would be a good idea to compare our data with charter schools and without charter schools. So if you look at the years 2015, 16, 17, you can see that our schools with charters were not doing as well as our own schools, without the charters. You can see the red bar was a little bit higher. But then beginning in 2017 and 18, with charter school data, compared to our district without the charters, you can see that our reclassification rates are a little bit higher. When I look at 2019-20, I can see that our district schools with charters does just as well as the county or the state with charters. So this just gives you a picture of how we compare And I think looking at our internal schools without charters is probably a truer picture of how we're doing. Next slide, please. So the reclassification criteria for an English learner to be reclassified has to meet the criteria on the left-hand side there. And I believe that I have presented this information to the board, I think it was 2 years ago. So first and foremost, they have to be able to score well on the LPAC. They need an overall score of level 4, which means they are fluent. And the LPAC includes listening, speaking, reading, and writing. They also have to demonstrate what's called comparison of performance and basic skills. That just translates into academics. So they have to be able to perform academically, similarly to peers who already speak English. And so for that, we look at the SBAC, or the CAS test, as some people refer it to. They have to be on grade level. They have to meet or exceed it. But we also have the option as a district to look at our own local assessments. So if they don't meet it on the SBAC, we look at other assessments like the REN STAR. They need to score at the 45th percentile because that's reaching grade level. Or for the younger students, they can, when they're assessed with the early literacy assessment called Next Step Guided Reading, they can meet or exceed on that assessment as well. So we look at students twice a year who meet these criterion, and then we connect with their teachers and we ask them how they're doing in class. They have to sign and approve that they agree with reclassifying the student. We also ask our teachers to get a writing sample for the student. We want to make sure that our students can write as well as an English-only peer. And then last and not least, we need the parent to agree with the recommendation to reclassify the student. Often that's done by a phone call or at a parent-teacher conference, but somehow the parent needs to agree with that recommendation. Next slide, please. When it comes to our students with disabilities who happen to also be English learners, the law and Ed Code is very strong on the language saying that they have every right to be reclassified. So English learners with disabilities, including students with severe cognitive disabilities, must be provided the same opportunities to be reclassified as those that do not have disabilities. There's two ideas that I want to express to the board. One is that we want to make sure that we are offering reclassification opportunity, but they still have to meet those four criteria, but we can use other measures besides the ones that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. The other point I want to make is that sometimes, from time to time, you might hear an educator, a person say, well, we should just reclassify the student because they have a disability and they'll never reach that criteria. So let's just reclassify them because they shouldn't be an English learner. And that is also not true. So we have to make sure that we are continuing to support students who have linguistic needs for as long as they need them until they're reclassified. Next slide, please. So when we began this work 2 years ago, if you remember, for those board members that were with us 2 years ago, we were in the beginning stages of looking internally in our district at those processes that we had in place for looking at how to reclassify students with disabilities. And we learned a lot in the last 2 years by reading, by consulting with districts, by talking to staff at the county office. And these two documents, I would say, are the two main resources that we use to guide our work. The first one is the LPAC guide that really speaks to how to assess students with disabilities, what kinds of accommodations we should be making, how we should train our testers to assess those students. And the other one is a newer document that just came out last year. And I must say that many educators throughout the state are so grateful to the State Department of Education for putting this document out. You can see it here, it's a guide for educating English learners with disabilities, because we've all been asking, I've been a bilingual educator, I've been an educator for almost 40 years, and we've all been asking, how do you serve, how do you document, how do you reclassify students who are English learners and also have a disability. And this guide has been instrumental in providing that kind of guidance. Next slide, please. So one of the learnings that we have concluded is that the IEP team is pivotal in that decision to reclassify a student. The IEP must include services for linguistically diverse students and must address the EL needs of the student. So an IEP cannot just be written based on the academic needs. If the student is an English learner, it must have a language objective goal. The student is entitled and is required to get ELD from their teacher, be it the classroom teacher, if it's a student who's being served in a resource specialist setting, or if it's an SDC, it can be that teacher as well. We also learned that those 4 criteria that what I went over are minimum criteria. So we can look at other things. We don't just have to look at the SBAC, for example. We have to look, you can also use the other assessments that the students are taking as part of the assessment process as a student with disabilities, and that this should be annually reviewed. So every time there is an IEP meeting, the English learners' needs must be reviewed and looked at. And finally, that decision to reclassify the student is based on an IEP decision, which means that there needs to be someone on that IEP team who knows how to address the needs of English learners, a so-called expert, somebody who understands ELD, someone who understands the linguistic needs of English learners. And so this is a collaborative effort between general ed and special education staff. I want to impress upon the board that many of our teachers understand these requirements, but we have not implemented a process where everyone understands the requirements for reclassification as it pertains to students with disabilities. Next slide, please. So the questions that the IEP team will be asking when they are considering reclassification is, one, do the assessments for English language arts indicate that the student is performing in a range that enables them to compete effectively with English-speaking peers? And this is the question that we ask for any English learner who's being considered for reclassification. Can this student perform well without support, without a lot of scaffolding, as we would be providing for English-only peers? The second question that we would ask is their academic performance in the classroom commensurate to the intellectual abilities due to the disability, but not necessarily due to language difference? Sometimes people might perceive that a student who doesn't speak English very well may be disabled. And it is possible that there may be some confusion, or we need more information to identify whether the challenge is really due to language or whether the challenge is really due to the disability. And the last question, or one other question that would be asked in the IEP is, does the student's performance mirror students with similar disability versus peers with language differences? So the question here is really, if we reclassify this student, is the student performing equal to a student with the same disability who happens to not be an English learner? So lots of conversation, lots of consideration, with a lot of documentation and evidence to show that the student is ready to be reclassified. Next slide, please. So there are 3 pathways that we can take when we're reclassifying a student. And let's talk about language proficiency, that first criteria that I talked about, the one when I talked about the LPAC. One is that the student with disability can take the LPAC with or without an accommodation. So if the student's IEP already says that the student will be taking assessments with accommodations, then we need to provide the LPAC with accommodations, and that needs to be documented and scored accordingly. The other pathway is if you have a student who has who maybe has part of the LPAC they can't take. Like, for example, maybe they can do the listening and speaking, but not the reading and writing. Then we can give them part of the LPAC and then find a different assessment for those sections of the LPAC that the student may not be able to take, but we have to find an alternative for that part of the LPAC. And the last pathway, and this is probably more specific to students with severe disabilities, is no LPAC, because it's not an appropriate assessment. So we need to identify an alternate language proficiency assessment. So this is where the challenge has been, because in the last couple of years, we've been waiting for the state to implement what they're calling the alternate LPAC, which was supposed to help districts with an assessment, because there were so many requirements about that alternate assessment that needed to be used. Like, we just couldn't use whatever we had. We had to really find someone that was aligned to ELD standards. And so unfortunately, that assessment has not been implemented yet. So it's really up to the districts to figure out what they want to use for that alternate assessment. In our case, in Franklin-McKinley, like many districts in the state, we're going to be using something that the County Office of Ed uses. It's a very basic language test. And so we will be needing to train our staff on using that assessment as an interim measure until we get the alternate LPAC from the state. Next slide, please. So I know this looks very overwhelming, but I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability without confusing you. So on the left-hand side, you have the 4 criteria that we need to reclassify a student. In the middle column is what a student who does not need special education services, what we would be using in our district. And in the third column, these are the accommodations, or the accommodations that we would make in looking looking at a student with disabilities who happens to also be an English learner. So again, for the LPAC, it would be one of those three pathways that I described. And for the basic skills, it would have to be using, it doesn't have to be SBAC or RENSTAR. It can be another assessment where we can demonstrate that the student has met that criterion. The teacher evaluation part would be the teacher who is serving, the case managers who are serving the student to verify that the student is making progress on their IEP goals and that they are performing to the best of their ability with a student who has a disability that is not an English learner. And then of course, the parent has to be part of that IEP team decision to agree with the reclassification. So all of this has to be documented as part of the IEP team's decision. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the alternate LPAC. It was developed a couple years ago. They developed it to help districts to have a standard, consistent test across the district for those students that with severe disabilities that need this assessment. We were supposed to have it implemented this year, but due to the pandemic, it's been postponed to next year. Next slide, please. So what are our next steps here is in our district in Franklin-McKinley, the special education team and ed services staff are finalizing all the tools we're gonna need for our training. They're putting together a training plan. We are going to train our staff on the language proficiency test that we're going to use in the meantime until the alternate LPAC is operationalized. We're going to continue to work with all our case managers to identify English learners with disabilities who should be considered for reclass. And we're going to begin training our site teams starting in February. Our hope is to have principals and case managers as well as gen ed staff who are involved to come together in teams to learn about not only just reclassification, but making sure that when students are initially identified, that we're really looking at accommodations for assessment, and that we're really making sure that we institutionalize in Franklin-McKinley a consistent system so that everyone understands how important this is for our students. Next slide, please. So I just want to end by thanking the special ed team who's been working on this for, like I said, almost a year and a half on this. We did put a pause on it after March. When we went into the school closure, we put a pause on that because there were other priorities. We've now resumed that work. And I also want to thank Taylor Nguyen because without her reclassification, she's really the monitor and the person who really makes sure that we stay compliant. So thank you to that team. And I'm available for any questions you may have at this point. Thank you.
Okay, board members. George, would you like to go first?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Norma, for all that information. There's quite a bit.
I know, I'm sorry. I tried to make it simple.
Yeah, right. I was gonna ask a question though, in terms of the bigger picture. As our kids move away from us, and of course, our mission is really to have our kids ready for the high school curriculum. That's our main mission, I think. From one board member, that's our mission. But in terms of the lab population and the kids that you were speaking about here, particularly our special education kids, where are we as they move into the high school level, percentage-wise? How many kids are we sending up there that are still in the lab category versus those who have been reclassified and are pretty much ready to jump into the freshman class and so on?
That's a really good question. And I think I'd like to provide that information at another time when I can get some data. But I will say, George, that there is some concern at the middle school levels with moving kids on who are still EL, our long-term English learners. So we were getting a lot of pressure at Ed Services to come up with reclass has always been there, but this reclass for students with disability has been a concern. So I'm happy to bring back that information.
Okay. And I know being, looking from the high school perspective, having been at the high school level for a few years, that many times if the students still need to stay back a little bit more, for their benefit, but there's tremendous pressure for them to move forward anyway, and to the high school level, even though they're not at that level where we do want them to be, so that they can be successful. Anyway, just want to throw that out. Thank you.
Okay, Rudy.
Yes, Norma, thank you very much. It was easy to understand. I appreciate. This is one of the most thorough presentations I've seen on reclassification. So great job.
Thank you.
Well, I did want to ask a few questions on the reclassification criteria, and that is, I don't even know what slide it is. I think it's slide 9. There's the state criteria. Now that must be followed by all schools, correct?
Yes.
Including charter schools?
So the criteria, good question, Rudy. On the left-hand side, the state criteria must be followed by the charter schools.
Okay.
What they did, the one on the right-hand side, LPAC 4, all charter schools. The SBAC meet or exceed all charter schools. Everything else is up to the local board. And you, in fact, as a board, adopted this criteria in 2018.
Right. For example, the Renaissance Star test or assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And also the next step guided reading assessment as well.
Local.
So not all, so the reason possibly, I appreciate you separating our schools from the charter schools that are within our district, because one of the reasons that they may be elevated is because they don't follow the rigorous criteria that we follow, including those additional assessments that we do, and also including the writing sample and the parent consultation process. They may just send a letter to the parent asking for their approval, and their parent doesn't know what to say, so they just send a letter back, yeah, go ahead. But it may not be correct, whereas we have conferences with the parents, conferences with the teachers and the parents, and so forth. So I can see how our process can be more rigorous. Is that correct?
Well, I'll say that in reviewing the charter schools petitions in the past and even currently, I have been asking specifically for what is their local criterion for reclassifying, because sometimes that information is not included with specificity. I think that the writing sample is something that we added as a district. I felt very strongly about that because many districts have always included a writing sample, but not all districts do. And so it is possible that other districts may end up with higher reclassification rates, but I personally feel that I want our students to be ready to perform and compete. I'm not going to reclassify a student who cannot be academically successul.
Okay, and yeah, and again, other districts might do that, but I'm thinking about the charter schools within our district when they come up with renewals. Would you please be detailed on what their reclassification process includes and what it's lacking in the charter evaluation? Because I think that could be a major impact on whether the renewal substantiates approving or not, based on are they providing sound education experiences for their students. The reason why we bring charter schools within our district is because it's an enhancement to our district, not something that's less. And this reclassification process is very important because most of our students, or a lot of our significant number of our students, go through this process so that they can be ready for high school, like George had mentioned. If we're sending students that aren't ready, and those include students from charter schools, then we need to look at that.
I just want to also make a comment that when it comes to reclassification rates, as we compare ourselves to other schools, other districts, it's always been a common that schools and school districts with higher numbers of newcomer students sometimes have lower reclass rates because you've got more kids at the beginning levels of learning English and it takes longer. And so that's just something that we have to remember when we're looking at reclass rates as well, is that if we have more newcomers or more kids at beginning levels of the LPAC, it may impact our reclass rate.
And are you also finding that students with disabilities in our schools, because we have a higher number of students with disabilities, it's going to have a larger impact on reclassification than the charter schools?
It could. I can't with confidence say it does, but it could.
Well, if we look at the numbers and the data with their percentage, most of our charter schools have a lower percentage of students with disabilities in their enrollment than our district does. So that might have an impact on the reclassification percentage as well. Okay, that's all the questions I had. Thanks.
Okay. Carrie, do you have any questions, comments for Norma?
First, thank you for putting this together. Appreciate all the information you provided. The only question I had was regarding, you mentioned in one of the slides that by February or March of this year that both, I guess, the principals and general ed staff members will be trained. Does that mean that all the special ed instructors have been trained with this, or?
Yes, let me clarify, Carrie. So all the special education teams will be trained, and we will include general ed if they are involved, if they want to be, but we want to train the principals so that we can then filter this down to the gen ed teacher community as well. But we're going to start with our special educators because they're the ones that are going to have to make those decisions as part of the IEP team process.
Okay, so as of now, they still haven't been trained yet.
No, we're still working on all our training materials. It took us a long time to understand it fully, and so we want to make sure we do a good job.
Okay, sounds good. That's the only question I had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to echo what all the board members said about how easy to understand this presentation is. Very well organized, and thank you for that, Norma. My only question to you would be, what would be considered a long-term English learner?
It's a good question, and I can answer that. So it's a student who's been an English learner for 5 or more years.
Wow.
And perhaps maybe next time we can get a glimpse into that if we have data in
Yes,
in that too.
yes, we am happy to do that.
Great. Because I would also like to see I don't know how we're going to get that in, but our reclassification rate for our long-term English learners. Just out of curiosity
Oh, that's an interesting idea. So maybe looking at how long it takes FMSD students to be reclassified, you know,
that would be a
like
great
percentages, like 2 years, 3 years. That would be a great study.
2.4, 3.2, something like that. That would be
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Norma. Board members, I would assume that would be no more questions on or comments.
No more.
Great, then that was only information only, and we will move on. So let's move on to consent items. Sorry, I had to unmute myself real quick. Okay, so for consent, item number 7, consent items. I'm going to read this for both sections 7 and 8. So board members, if you need to move any consent items, please let me know now. Hearing none, we will move on. So item number 7, members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaws 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on these items for both 7 and 8?
We do not have any speakers for those items.
Great, thank you, Juan. If so, I will take a motion for item number 7, consent items under 25,000 board members.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Move to approve consent items 7.1 through 7.3 and 8.1.
Second.
Items 7 and 8 have been moved and seconded. All those in, actually, we'll do a roll call vote. I'm sorry about that.
If we
Okay,
could,
do I do that?
let's just do 7 and then 8 so that it's.
Okay, then Carrie, can you redo your?
Yeah, okay. So move to approve consent items 7.01 through 7.03.
And that's the second.
Okay. Items 7.01 through 7.03 have been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with George.
Aye.
Rudy.
Aye.
Carrie.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, and that will be unanimous. Moving on to item number 8. Board members, whenever you're ready.
Move to approve consent item 8.01.
Second.
Consent item 8.01 have been moved and seconded. We'll go through a roll call vote. George.
Aye.
Rudy.
Aye.
Carrie.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And that is unanimous. And now we're moving on to item number 9, action items. 9.01, personnel report. Carrie, can you please read through, or
Yes.
can you assist us in that one?
Yes. I move that the personnel report be approved as submitted and that A, the retirement for the following employee be approved. Carolyn Sumida, teacher at Dahl, June 30th, 2021. B, the resignation for the following employees be approved. Sonia Villagran, food service assistant at Layron, January 29th, 2021. Yolanda Nunez Castillo, noon duty at Stonegate, November 12th, 2020. And C, the 39-month rehire for the following employee be approved. Margie Ridgway, secretary 2 at McKinley, 1/21/2021.
Second.
Item 9.01 have been moved and seconded. All those, sorry, we'll go with the roll call vote. George.
Aye.
Rudy.
Aye.
Carrie.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. That will be unanimous. Moving on to item 9.02, January 12th, 2021 board meeting minutes. Board members, take a few minutes here to review, and I'll take a motion whenever you're ready.
Move to approve the January 12th, 2021 board meeting minutes.
Second.
The January 12th, 2021 board meeting minutes have been moved and seconded. We'll go through a roll call vote. George?
Aye.
Rudy?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to 9.03, reporting on delegating authority to take the necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus COVID-19. That will be Juan.
And I have taken no action under this authority. There's nothing to report in regards to that delegation. I will, at the next meeting, give a more thorough update in regards to the current change in the stay-at-home order that the governor announced yesterday, and give the board an update in regards to that and any planning that we are engaged in as per the board's direction about in-person instruction for designated student that are at greater risk. So there's no other action to report.
Hey, Juan, I have a question. Ton, can I ask a question to Juan?
Go ahead, Rudy.
One question regarding the vaccinations, and I know that our teachers are coming up, could possibly be coming up in one of the immediate future phases based on the amount of vaccine that we receive. When that time comes and we start talking about teachers and staff being vaccinated, can you inquire with whoever, I guess it would be the county, inquire that if we could also include our charter schools as well? The teachers?
Yeah, I mean, it will include all that are designated under that.
Okay.
School employees. It does not designate whether you're charter, non-charter, private. Any that falls under the classification will be able to get the vaccine when it's available from their primary care provider, and if they don't have one, then it falls to the county to issue those vaccines. But I will keep the board updated in regards to when the providers are now moving to the second tier, which is where education is designated to get the vaccine.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that the entire community. I know that I just checked the zip codes on the county website, and our zip code here is one of the highest number of cases per capita, per population.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that that all the schools are included, because the the virus does not know what's a charter school and what's a regular traditional public school. Okay.
Yeah, correct. No, we will keep the board updated in regards to any regarding the vaccine. Yesterday, we know that what the issue is just the availability of the vaccine for the county to start moving to allowing providers to go to the 1B, which is where school personnel is, and then those that are 65 and older. So the first phase has not completed, so they haven't moved to the second phase.
Okay. Thanks.
Board members, do we have any further questions for Juan regarding this topic? No? Okay. Thank you, Juan. Moving on to item 9.04, approval of publication of 2019-2020 school accountability report cards. That would be Dr. Norma Martinez-Palmer.
Yes, in accordance with our ed code, the board of every school district will annually approve the publication of our SARC reports for each one of our schools. The data included in these 2019-20 report cards should include achievement data, budget information, facility information. Because of the pandemic, some of that information was not available. CD has made accommodations for that. We're required to seek your approval for publishing these and making sure they're on our website by February 1st. So I ask for your approval for the publication of these SARCs.
Board members, do we have any questions for Norma on these? No? Okay. Then I'll take a motion whenever you're ready.
Move to approve action item 9.04, the approval of the publication of 2019-20 school accountability report cards.
Second.
Item 9.04 has been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. George?
Aye.
Rudy?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to item 9.05, 2021 through 2022 and 2022 through 2023 school calendars. That would be Annette.
Good evening. A committee consisting of FMEA, CSEA, and administration met on December 14th and January 12th to come up with the draft calendar for 2021-22 and the 2022-23 school year for your consideration.
Great. Board members, do we have any questions on the school calendars for the next 2 years?
I just want to make sure, did we consult with the FMEA on this as well?
Yes, FMEA was part of the calendar committee.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Any other questions, board members? Hearing none, I will take a motion whenever you are all ready.
Move to approve the 2021 and 2022-23 school calendars.
Second.
Item 9.05 have been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. George?
Aye.
Rudy?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Caught myself there, folks, and I vote aye as well. Now we're done with action items. So moving on to item number 10, communications from the superintendent. Juan?
Yes. Excuse me. I want to just report that I'm going to start my school visits this week, and I will report back a summary of the conversation and the concerns that may be raised at those meetings with the board. No other comments.
Thank you, Juan. Move on to item 11, communications from Board of Education. 11.01, board member reports. We'll start with George.
Just a couple of things real quick. The Santa Clara County School Boards Association had a workshop for the new school board members. So they invited three veteran school board members to talk to the group, and I was one of them. So I kind of share some of the experiences I've had here in my years on this board, and so it was very well received. Well, all of us, shared experiences, quite a few over the past a couple of decades. But anyway, that was nice. And then the other thing, I did go to the Second Harvest Food Bank once more at Larone School, and we had again a big turnout this last week. That's my report.
Thank you, George. And I got to make it out to that Second Harvest Food Bank one of these days. Rudy?
Yeah, George, when you started on the board, we didn't have cell phones and we barely had email. I don't have a report. Thanks, Tom.
I had a good typewriter. That's what I.
Okay. Thanks, Rudy. Carrie?
No report.
And I have no report as well. So we'll move on to 11.02, agenda item requests. Board members, do we have any items we want to submit or have an update on in terms of the timeline? If not, then we'll move on to item 12, future business. We have none. Item 13, future meeting dates. We can see that the next 3 meetings are there and it will all be remote. We have no reason to go back into closed session. So we're at item 15, adjournment, and I'll take a motion whenever.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, adjournment is moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. George?
Aye.
Rudy?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. We are adjourned as of 8:45 p.m. Thank you all, and have a great night.